All right. Welcome everybody to our book club for this month. That's on Soup by John Gordon. Oh, and you got to move. And we are going to be talking about culture today. So that is something that for me, I'm always in a battle with trying to make a priority, but also doing our everyday tasks of our business. And that sounds strange, but I think it is an interesting thing that I can't read this book enough times. I love John Gordon. So when I read him, I feel like he's talking to me. It's just really easy. And I have read it, I don't know, probably 4 times. And then I listened to it on Audible for the first time. And I would actually say this is a book I would read. I found that for me, I liked to read it and then think about it and kind of picture myself and not have a different voice. That was just me. That's kind of what I've enjoyed about doing it. And I totally wanted to dress up like a grandma and be super fun and be cooking something. But at noon with homeschool, I was happy to take a shower. So thanks, guys. And I did just take a shower just for you all. So if you can smell the Breathe Again and the Believe on me, those were the 2 oils that I thought were Endoflex and Transformation, but it's fine. So those are on me and where, wherever you need them. So anybody else have a bottle of oil around them that is something inspirational to you? It doesn't matter what it is. Yep. Tracy has Valor. April has 85 by her. I do if I'm in my office, but I'm in the classroom.
Ooh. White light.
Oh, I love white light.
I love it so much.
I'm putting more Believe on. So as we start, I would love for you to type in the comment section or in the chat. And if you're watching the replay, in the comments, what the word culture means to you. So not the definition, but when you hear that, what it means. And if you name some random pop culture artists, that's okay too. I meant literal your association with when you hear the word culture, you're like, here's what I think of. Just going to give us a second. Yep. How people interact with each other. That's great. Values, beliefs, attitudes. Team morale. So I think it's interesting because it's also for all of us. So I would say for me, when I just hear it, I think of how I feel about what I'm working on and who I'm working with. And maybe that just sounds weird, but just the thread, I was curious to see if all of us talked about people, because sometimes it's not. I felt like corporately when I worked, this is funny, not the corporate, but for the government, I felt like culture was like paper and what they told us everyone should feel like. It didn't feel like how we felt or how we were working together, but it did feel like it was here's the values and beliefs and here's how we interact together. And it felt very here's what it is. And then you just kind of figure it out. You just be part of that, but no one really believed they were part of it. And maybe that's helpful for you. Maybe it's not, but I'll say an opposite experience is that for a while I worked at our church and I felt like it was the opposite. I felt like it was the culture was because the people created the values, the systems, and the beliefs. And the culture was not something we had written down. It was how it felt to be part of it. And that is something that ever since that experience on my team, I have become much better at feeling, even though I don't love feelings. Maybe y'all do more than me. Actually, raise your hand if you feel you're oh, I'm a feeler. I like to talk about feelings, like to process them. No. So this is actually fun. This is funny. I was thinking I wanted to ask this question and I thought it would be probably not helpful for you guys. I was me, Tracy, and April. I was maybe April will say yes, but I don't think so. So I just thought it'd be funny. So clearly maybe someone else in your upline, if you really need to process feelings, I'm kidding. I like to process with other people, but I don't love that question. If someone asks me, how do you feel today? I'm totally oh, I feel awesome. I've got all these things done. I'm not here's what's going on in my life. And I'm really processing through grief over the situation. That's not how I would answer a question. And the reason I'm prefacing it with this is I really feel through this book, when it talked about the value of what you add as in the culture piece is you, that I'm man, you is all of you. You is your feelings. It's how you show up. It's your knowledge. It's you as you develop wisdom. So it's the good and the bad and everything in between. So that was something fun. Hey, welcome Josie and Tiffany and Danny. Glad to have you on here. Just excited to hear if you're just jumping on what you think about the word culture. Okay, so let's actually talk about each lesson. I am not good at staying on track. So April is going to make me stay on track and probably add the actual wisdom, but she won't say that, but it's just true. I get off topic constantly. Okay. the biggest statement in lesson 1 is who stirs the pot matters. And it sounds weird when I say it, when I read it. Like the person that cooks the soup, so like literal grandma soup, let's think of it that way. Or tell me in the comments what's your favorite family recipe that you're like, it tastes so good, like I love it. Because for me, my grandmother used to make pound cake. And it's like the most unhealthy thing in the world. It's, a pound of butter, a pound of sugar, like, but no one else, like it does not taste like no one can make it. And we just laugh because her recipe is ridiculously simple. And it's literally like stir 40 times, bake at 3, like no one can make it because it was her. She like truly was the secret ingredient. Yeah, Tracy said Chinese dumplings. See, I feel like those might have more skill. My example, the pound cake, I'm like, this sounds super lame, like pound cake, very American here. And I think even like my mom makes really good banana pudding and it's not even all from scratch, but I tried to make it this weekend with my family. And I think I tried to make it healthier and it was like gross. Like it wasn't even, because here's the thing. Inserting myself, I changed the ingredients because I believed that my presence in the recipe didn't matter. I was like, oh, we'll just swap things out. And I just thought that was interesting. It's an interesting analogy to think about it. I don't know, April, maybe that would be fun, or just a dish, like a dish that you're like, that's something someone in my family made and you can't really replicate it. That was kind of my red beans and rice. Yeah, my mother-in-law makes, I bet you mine would not be like my mother-in-law's at all. Ooh, a Puerto Rican soup with, man, Tiffany, can you cook that for me? I love soups. Yes, because it's made with love. So the person stirring the pot matters. And that is what I want you to speak over yourself. Like, who stirs the pot on your team? And I don't mean creates conflict. When I say that, I'm like, that also doesn't sound the same as what we're saying. But do you believe that you showing up matters? Do you believe that? Yeah. See a couple head nods, Beverly. Yeah. Here's a question that I think to myself. Do you believe that who comes with you to stir the pot matters? What I mean by that is like, do you believe there's something different when this person comes and this person comes and this person comes? Yeah. I love it. Yeah. Tracy said 10,000%. That's right. Like I think of all the in-person classes that I do. And when certain people don't come, I'm like, man, I miss them. And then Zooms for sure miss people because even if they don't talk, I'm like, they're so fun. They interact, like they're always smiling. They're like giving hand motions. They're talking in the chat. They're, messaging people after. And I think that chemistry, right? That chemistry really matters. So that's the first lesson. And again, please unpause. I mean, unmute if you would like to speak up on that. So I loved these couple statistics or not statistics, but things I wanted to mention. Wine experts can determine the personality of the winemaker by tasting the wine. So when I think about that, I'm like, wow. So that's not their preferred ingredients, but they can taste the difference based on the person and what they enjoy most on that wine. And that is huge because that means the flavor of my classes that I do. If I write a class script, I don't really think much about it, but I'm like, that means I'm showing up and putting myself in it. Not the same as me, maybe reading someone else's or maybe sharing someone else's video. And I don't know about you guys, that's super convicting for me because a lot of times I think it's being humble, saying like theirs is better, I'll just do theirs, I'll share theirs. But a lot of times I'm taking out the most important ingredient. Anyone else have a realization with that, or is that just me?
Actually, I was just going to say, I totally agree with you. When I love to repurpose content, right? Because I think it's a smart way to save time, but I can definitely tell what the engagement is like when it's my voice versus someone else's voice. When it's my voice, the engagement is like through the roof. And when it's someone else's voice, they can tell it's been reposted. So it's just kind of a fine line of like saving time. Maybe I use part of it and still infuse my voice in it. Or maybe I just hop on a video and just do it that way. But I think there's something to that for sure.
Part of what's different about Zoom versus us just posting, here's the, lessons from the book, is that maybe we can see a little bit about what we're all thinking. And then just the next really neat thing I thought about, I read that correlates to this is our lives, careers, and our businesses all reflect the love and energy we put in them. And people who see the outcome or the fruits of what we're doing, they can trace it back to who we are as a person. That's not like a statistic, but that's like a true. If you think about someone who owns a business, let's say Not Young Living. I mean, everybody have a person in your head? Can you think of like some? It's probably going to be someone who's either in sales or service industry. And I just think about the gym I go to in the morning. Great Orange Series, great brand. But the person that I want to see that shows up, like the person that is the sales associate that when I walk in the door, I'm like, I want to see Mac today. I love Mac. She's like, what treadmill do you want? How's it going? Like social distance high five, like super energetic. And then she follows up, right? Hey, I saw you crush blah, blah, blah. Like, and that's not even here's why I'm saying it's not even her job. Like her job is totally to check people in and to like run the front desk, but she takes on all of the like culture piece of like this rocks and I'm going to make it even better because I am here. I don't know if y'all have anybody want to share another example? Because I mean, I don't want to give you, I could probably give 10 of them, but I'm not going to. What about a restaurant? Mortgage broker, financial advisor? No. Y'all are a tough crowd.
When I go, hi, it's Josie. When we go, like you said, a restaurant, I always want to look for that same person because that person knows, he already knows exactly what we're going to order, how we like our steak, what sides are going to go with it. And when he's not there, it's just like, oh, okay, well, we're going to eat here again, but it's just not going to be the same experience. And to tag along with that, now with all the new language and everything that's coming out for Young Living, we've decided in our team, yes, our leader is going to send us all the info, but I said I'm going to just take that and put it in my own video with my own my face and my voice and everything like that, because it's true, you want to hear from the people that the people who you trust. So for that, especially now with all the changes that we're going to have, I think it's important that we communicate ourselves to our own team, as big or as small as that may be.
It's good. That waiter example, that's clutch. I wish we went out to eat and actually had that example. My kids can't sit. So we've like need to probably try going out to eat again because we just really don't. Tiffany said she's a hairstylist. And I feel like a hairstylist or any personal care service is huge for going to the same person, right? Hairstylist, massage therapist, chiropractor, doctor, even like those kinds of things. If you get your nails done, like that, I don't know of anyone actually in my life that's like, I'll just show up and see who wants to cut my hair today. Like they definitely are going to choose you, not just based off of how well you execute it, but based off of what you put into it as far as the connection to other people and the love you pour out over them. So that's really every day when you don't think it matters in this business for you to show up, remind yourself of that. And that is something I have to tell myself with Insta stories. I mean, I'll just tell you guys honestly, I very much like don't love it. So I'm like, yay. Like a lot of times I'm like, yay. And I'll like do some. And I have to remember that everyone can feel the energy I put into it. So if I'm not really in it and I'm not showing my face and I'm not really like engaging with people, then it's really just it's not really even helpful. It's me just checking a box. All right. So here we go. Peter's first lesson. How many of you guys resonate with Peter? You were like, yeah. I have a soft heart more and more. I like have been like in this book again, that I'm like, oh, I love Peter. Because before I think I judged Peter. I was like, why? Why can't he just learn that there are secrets? Okay. So Peter's first lesson, he actually figured out that soup equals culture. And for him to turn around a business, culture had to be what mattered more than numbers or more than like an overhaul or more than tangible things people can see. So Peter's first habit, our first really big realization, and then culture. And I would drive this down. I would write this down if you haven't already. I can type it in the comments too. Culture drives behavior. Behavior drives habits, and culture trumps strategy every time. So culture is king. That's always how I think of it. Culture is king. Culture will eat everything else in your business for breakfast or lunch, depending on what correlation we're talking about, but it will eat everything else alive, like in your business. It will just, if there's a negative culture, then people will stop showing up. People will stop participating in things, buying things. And I think when Peter realized that, I just think his total perspective had to have shifted, but also his heart didn't seem super soft towards like anything that wasn't sales and numbers driven. So this is a huge turnaround for him, and maybe for some of us. Soft is powerful. That's another one that I'm like, soft is powerful. I am not gentle. I don't know if anyone on here has the gift of gentleness. It would be awesome if you did. I need to be around you more. Wait, no one? Come on. No? Well, April, do you? No? I think you do. It's a compliment. I think you're gentle. She's like, I'm not saying anything.
I
Think
try to,
gentle. What?
I try to be.
Yeah. Tracy, maybe you are. That was probably mean. I'm like, I didn't say that. Tracy's like, no. And I'm like, yeah. Like I try, like, that's something I pray for myself all the time with my family, is that it's not my natural. And then in my business, it doesn't come across probably as harshness, but it comes across as like, I'm like, oh, okay. Like the part about not being soft is where I'm like, oh, okay. And then I'm like moving on when I'm like, oh, I didn't stay there. Like I didn't stay there and kind of fix that relationship, or I didn't fix that issue. I kind of just said, okay, like, great. Yeah. Enneagram 3 problems. Yeah. I feel like I'm totally relate to Peter with that, where I'm like, he was a 3. Like he has to have been a 3. Maybe let's not say that. I don't like to pigeonhole us with personalities, but it just feels like soft is powerful. Feels like a really hard statement to hear if you're someone that leads from strength and that leads from like, let's figure it out, versus let's come together and hear what's going on and be part of it and really create a movement more than like a moment. I really think there's a big difference in those two things. You must nurture your culture. And the great example of that is a tree. And I am terrible at growing things. So I picture not a tree, but I picture, I have a couple house plants right now. And I really just want them to look good. Like I don't really care about them very much. I don't really like need to touch them. I don't need to move them around and take pictures with them. I'm not being funny. I just mean I don't love it. So what I've had to realize is I have to water the root. I have to water them, even if they don't look dry, because I want to give them water before there's brown leaves, which might sound simple to those of you like, I have a total green thumb, but to me, I'm like, okay. So if the root of a tree matters, so does the root of my little house plant, because that is where the nutrients come from. That is where it spreads out and actually takes hold of the ground and grows deeper. And everything that's not seen is what really matters. And we know that. Like, I think we all are like, well, but thinking that about ourselves and as we run an organization, I'm like, the roots matter. So the roots matter. So we have to focus on the root, not the fruit. The fruit's way prettier, right? Even green leaves on something are prettier. And we have a couple fig trees in our front yard that I'm like, why aren't they growing? Like we planted them, they're like the same height. And my husband, who knows way more than me about all growing things, was like, Ashley, the roots are like 4 feet. Like the root system has grown like 4 feet out from the center of the plant. So that's growing like 10 times as fast as he said, he said something. I just thought it was so interesting. Yes. April, feed them. April, do you like, when you think I was with your team, how do you think feeding looks when we say like feed them and how that changes culture?
Well, just showing up for one, that is a huge way to feed them, because not everybody has the drive to wake up every day and do the things that they need to do, because there are so many amazing fun parts of this, and we will gravitate towards that first. And then there's the mundane parts that we don't love. Like, I like to run numbers and I like to do different spreadsheets and download reports and see who's doing what. But not everybody likes that, or they don't think about checking in at the end of the month to see who ranked up or who's close to ranking up, or maybe that is the fun part for them and they don't like to send out little mailers, or they don't like to send out texts. And showing up and showing them that you're doing those things, like that is a way to feed them. It's not just being inspirational in some leadership, let's show up and talk about team culture today, and teaching them. It's like feeding them is showing them what you're doing too. And I meant feed your fig trees. So they'll grow. But it's the same with your team. You have to feed your team. Just like spiritually, we go to church to get fed spiritually. And, the Bible says to gather together. And in a business, I think you have to, it's the same thing. You have to gather with other like-minded people. Even if you're not in the exact same business, you will still gather with other entrepreneurs or other people in your field. If you're an organizer or a hairstylist, or like, you'll still gather with people. We're just not meant to do anything alone, I don't think.
You made me laugh. You're like, I meant your fig tree. Told you, April, I don't care that much about my plants. And I also don't know what's happening. I pretend to like, that's something I can't put in my brain, but it's probably not true. The time thing that you just said, I think is something that we've all struggled with in the past year, is like how to spend time with people when it's all, I mean, for me, like, stuff like when I feel like when it's virtual, it's not this, like, it's really not. It's the same if that's how the time was always spent, if that makes sense. Like, if that's how I've always spent time with you, then I didn't transition. But I think for me, it's been a struggle of like, time is still so invaluable and so important. And even if this relationship used to be twice a week in person, now I have to figure out like how to see them and show up for them the same way, even if it's harder or even if it's different. Some of you guys might not think that's harder, but I know for me, it's definitely harder for me to put on my calendar, Zoom with your two friends. Like, I don't want to do that. I have to remind myself that it's important to see their faces and talk and interact, even if it's different. All right. So the next point, see, I told you I'll just talk forever. I'm not going to. The next point with Peter's first lesson, and just I wanted to read this, I think it's huge. Great leaders create great cultures, and that's what makes greatness in an organization. That's what books are written about. That's what we study about leadership. We actually study their culture way more than their numbers. So if you think about that, anything that you've ever done outside of kind of reading these past few books for personal development, it always is a reflection of what they built. Like, that's why we have books that we, read or promote, like Good to Great, right? Because we're talking about how to go from okay to better. I think of like Ideal Team Players, a book I wrote with a lot of people from different industries. And it really, at the end of the day, had these great things you do, but it's all culture. It's all how to build something that lasts based off people being and feeling connected. And this is something, as you're watching the replay, if you're only on this part of the book, then keep going, because there is actually more. It's not just that we have to realize culture is important. Okay, first ingredient, let's chat optimism. And if anyone wants to unmute, what does that look like for you? What does it look like to be optimistic or to use optimism in your life? All right. So
I can use a little a non-working example. So some of the things that I do is I coach a couple of volleyball teams for two of my daughters. And when I show up, like, and they're young, 4th grade, 6th grade. So when I show up, if I'm coaching them and I'm teaching them a skill, because I was a competitive player, so it's hard for me to like pull it back and just teach them how to do a basic skill. But when I'm teaching them, if I'm a little too intense, like I was initially when I started coaching, they kind of get intimidated and glazed over and scared. And, I had to step back and say, at this age, I just want them to love the sport, fall in love with the sport, have fun, so they come back and they can learn the skills as they go. And so I really worked on oiling up before I went. and just kind of getting into the mindset of, I want them to have fun and I want them to have a good time, even if we are not winning or even if we're winning, either way. And so for me, just showing up with my little sports teams and the kids with a positive attitude, optimistic, just really encouraging them. And I naturally gravitate towards, if you're working or doing something, what's the one thing you didn't do so well, and focusing on doing, improving that piece of it, or your whatever in the technique I'm teaching. And what I have been actively shifting, and I'm still working on it, but it's better, is what did you do right, and then kind of, and so it's definitely been a difference in how the kids interact and stuff. So.
I think that it has to become a habit, because I don't know, maybe some people are just natural always pessimistic and natural always optimistic, but I think it has to be like a routine habit. And like you were saying, Beverly, like consider what went well, find a solution, think over the either the problem at hand or just the day you just had, and being grateful that things went as planned or as best that they could go. And for me, it's trusting God and just knowing that my day or the situation turned out the way He knew it would. And whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, knowing that He is going to just lay out the rest of the steps. And I just have to trust Him and walk in that, because I can't control everything. And I think about this example of my sister. She was her son was in the ER, and he was like 4 states away, and she was trying to get to him, and literally every single thing that could go wrong went wrong. She should have been there in like 3 hours, and it took her like 10 hours to get to him. And it was just a myriad of multiple things, like the worst day ever. And I just kept saying, you just step back. Like, God has him. And I know you're his mom and you want to be there, but these things are getting in your way for a reason. And in the end, he's going to be okay. It's not a life-threatening thing that we think it is, but, or could be, but like, things are happening for a reason. Let's just step back and see that overall picture and focus on that, you know? And then there's also, just with optimism, for me, it's like focusing on the goal or the expectation and of the day, you know, and not allowing myself to think, well, what if this goes wrong, or what if this negative thing happens? And instead I'm thinking about like what I want to accomplish that day. And I don't know, just finding positive in difficult situations. It's when something goes wrong or not as planned, like think about the positive aspects of it. Like, okay, so I wasn't supposed to be here at this time. Maybe that plane, I missed that plane because it's going down, or there's somebody on it that needs to get to someone else even more. Like, she was running to switch planes and had to go outside, like the Skylink was down, and there was someone in front of her who was trying to get to her husband, who was on life support. I'm like, she goes first. Like, God lined that up for her. And they only allowed one person on the bus because of COVID. Everything was so spread out. And Jenny's like, I'm trying to get to my son in the ER. And she's like, I'm trying to get to my husband on life support. And she's like, you go, you know? So I don't know, taking action with what you can control and all of that. I talked way too long.
Oh my gosh, that was so good. I can totally relate to that. There have been many situations. It's like a flat tire. I remember coming home from a work trip. I'd been away from my family for like, I don't know, a week or two, got a flat tire in the parking lot. And like, it was such a like teaching moment for me, because I was like, I guess I just wasn't meant to go home right now, you know, AAA, whatever. I mean, they were out in like 45 minutes. And sure enough, it was like, there was an accident on the road. Maybe I avoided it. And I was like, you know what? I agree with you. It's like, there's only so much you can control. I can control my feelings towards the situation, but I can't necessarily control the whole thing. But what I can do is like look for solutions. And I think that as a leader is such a powerful thing to pass on and to teach. Is it's not about focusing on the problem, maybe in the way that you want to find a solution, but not like picking apart the problem about why it's not fair. It's, you know, all the feelings that kind of come with that. It's like, okay, this is the problem, but let's just find solutions towards it. And looking for the opportunities with that. So that was so good, April. I can totally resonate with that. And I think that is such a great thing to teach our leaders, that it's not about focusing on the problems. Yes, I think there's a teaching moment with problems, but finding solutions is so key. Love it.
Well, and avoiding negative people, like all the negative Nellies, all the pessimistic people. Like, the same principle is true. If you spend a lot of time around pessimists, it can be hard to find good in the world. And you need to be able to avoid negativity to become optimistic. Like the news. Like not watching the news.
Yeah, I love it.
I think also if you're a positive person, people that are negative kind of don't want to be that way around you, because they know that's not the way you are. like a friend of mine said the other day that she's a Christian woman and someone said a bad word, and oh, I'm sorry, because you're Christian, because they know, you know, her standards. So if you give out, you're a positive person, you're a problem solver, you know, the words that come out of your mouth are not going to be words that are, you know, pessimistic and down. You know, you're going to find the solution. People around you are not going to bring all that Debbie Downer stuff. They're going to, you know, be the way that you are.
Yeah, and I think it goes along right with the next one. Like they build on each other. So the next ingredient is vision. And this is something I think is hard for a lot of us. And what I mean by that is hard for a lot of us because if we don't feel like we're the carrier of the vision, I think it's hard for us to see where that vision comes in. And maybe that sounds a little convoluted, but so sharing the vision and having a vision is really this ingredient. So must be on purpose so people can rally around it. So I find that in Young Living, a lot of times, if you don't view yourself as the leader of your organization, you don't realize that you're the person that's sharing and carrying that vision. And it's not just like your upline, or it's not just like when you reach a certain rank. No, you get to do that even with one person. If the one person's you, you're a leader, even if one person's following you. And sometimes leading ourselves well is the first step. And I know for me, I have to be bought into my own vision before I can share it. Yes, Tracy just said your vision, team's vision, Young Living's vision. So knowing them clearly, when I think about Young Living, I know that the more I've grown to know the company and know exactly how we were founded, how our farms work, the more I feel like I'm sharing in that vision, so that when I spread it to someone else, it feels like we're part of it and it doesn't feel like a separate entity. So I notice myself that with language a lot, that will reflect how we view ourselves with sharing the vision. If we say we, or if we're talking about our company, right? Those words are very different than like a disconnect where it's not, where it's a separate thing. So this really captures the essence of your organization. So this is where it comes in of, you don't have to have a vision statement for your organization. Like you can, but that's not as important as you knowing what are the core parts of where you're headed, and not the how you'll get there, but where you're headed. And if you can talk to that crystal clear, and you can make that as clear as possible for people, they will see where you're going and they will want to also go along with you. So the North Star keeps everyone on track. And that's what a vision is. You always have to look back to the North Star, and you always have to look back and say, does this accomplish, like, am I, and maybe right now you're like, okay, so you're simply thinking about vision for your team. And you're like, okay, well, Young Living, we want to have essential oils in every home in the world. Okay, well, I want to serve families in a way that empowers them and that builds them up in their leadership skill. Maybe you just have all these things that are like chunks. That's great. Start talking about that with your team, and you can form something as you go. It doesn't have to be formed just on the initial, I'm thinking about it. Clear, simple, energizing, compelling. Clear, simple, energizing, compelling. So this will help you have a feeling of greatness within your teams. So a can of soup in every house, right? That's awesome. Like a can of soup in every house, kind of like essential oils in every home. Well, great. But we have to have a secondary vision that's ours for our team, and not just that big one that's corporately all of our vision together. So again, I'm going to just allow anybody who wants to talk about vision, what you think about it, what you learned, or anything you want to share.
I was going to say I can share, but I didn't want to hog in case anybody else wanted to go first. But I love the vision that Young Living has, essential oils in every home. And I feel like for me, my secondary vision is just, helping families, right? Both in business, because I used to work in the corporate world, and I call myself a part-time parent because I never saw my kids. They were in daycare, right? Because I had to work. I saw them maybe 2 hours at night on the weekends. So creating that that option for families, right, who really need it is huge for me. Like that is definitely a very big driving force for anybody who wants that portion, right? And then for the oils themselves, like we all know it, right? I mean, the oils are just life-changing. The oils, the supplements, everything. So it's like a two-parter for me. And it's like, no matter where someone comes with me on the journey, I'm like, I can go this way and we can go this way too. We can do both. But just that vision of wanting to help families, like helping families, right? Both in their health journey as well as like their growth journey for the future, like giving them flexibility, giving them time with their families. It's huge for me. For me, it's actually the business portion is even bigger because it's been such a life changer for us. The gift of time with my family. Oh, I want every family, like I get teary-eyed just thinking about it. I want that for every family who wants it. Did anybody else have something to share?
I mean, the next one is super fun. Trust. So they all build. I mean, really, I want you to think about it. Once you realize that culture is king and then you build these ingredients in, you won't be able to get away from it. Like you can't ignore it. You know, like kind of like when you learn something, it's really hard to pretend like you don't know it because you will learn it and keep going forward with it. And what Tracy said, I'm just mentioning this because I think it's just pretty incredible. The time freedom is such a big piece of the vision I want to paint for people. Like at my house right now, my husband just left to take my two little kids to forest school. Like it's also raining. So I'm like, oh, have a great first day, guys. And it's something that like super neat. We never would have been able to do this without time freedom. Because here's the thing, even if he was working and I was at home and running our business and homeschooling, we can't do something at the same time if we don't have time freedom. So I have a kid at swim. When he comes home, someone has to be here. I'm on a Zoom. They're going to, here's the thing though, like we get to do whatever we want. And that might sound weird, but you realize how intentionally you will plan out your life when it is your life to plan out. And I know that might sound strange for some of you guys, but think about the value. Some people might not be attracted to that, but a lot will be. And they'll start thinking about it will help them have vision because they're like, dude, what would I do without the schedule that someone else dictates? Like, what would I do? What would I do? And how much money do I even, like, here's the thing. How much money do I even need to make? Some people, it might be $4,000 a month. Some people, it might be $40,000 a month. I don't know. It depends on what your vision is and how you're going to use that as a tool that's part of what you're doing. And if you believe that essential oils in every home in the world is your vision you're carrying as well, there isn't a stopping point. You're not like, well, because that's a vision and your vision will really keep pulling you forward. So the next one is trust. So people follow the leader first and the vision second. Trust is the connection between who the leader is and what they're saying. In other words, do they believe that what you say is true? Do they believe that they get what they see and that you are authentic is really how I think of trust in this book is explained. And trust generates commitment, it generates teamwork, and it actually generates results because it drives. It's a deep, I almost think of trust also as like it's an admiration for someone because you really like you trust that they're gonna do that. And I know I tend to maybe love more sounds weird, but I think it's true. Like I tend to love someone more when I can trust them because I am able to also show up for them authentically, right? Like it goes both ways. So this is huge for a business because if you can't trust someone, then you probably think they're manipulating you or they're manipulating data or they're doing it for purely selfish desires. But if you trust them, you'll believe that what they're doing is for the good of the team and is for your personal good. So trust is built one day trust is built one day at a time, yet it's lost in one moment. That's hard. Like that's really hard. And maybe you don't think of it as much in your business life, but think of it in your personal life. Like when you're like, yeah. Especially if you could think of an example when you've had it done to you and you've been like, how did you handle that? And think about you as a leader. If someone breaks it, that how you respond matters. Because here's the thing, how you respond matters because none of these are singular ingredients. They're all together. So does anybody want to add anything about trust?
I was just going to say, I think so much as a leader of leading your team is do what you say when you say you're going to do it, right? Like if we're going to have a call, if we're going to have a class, like you're doing it, right? Or whatever things that you're putting out there that you're committing to, like you're going to do it. Like I'm really big on that. And your team will see that too, right? Because they'll see, oh my goodness, if she's late or she didn't make it, right? I think, of course, things happen, right? Like we're all human too, like we have families, but I think by and large, right, when they know what to expect from you, because you say, you do what you say you're going to do, that there's a big connection in there. So I think this ties in so much, Ashley, to like the optimism, pessimism thing, right? So I feel like the changes that are coming up are a great example of this, right? So when people trust you and you deliver a message of like, we have some changes that are coming up, right? But let me tell you, it's for the better because of X, Y, and Z, because they trust you. They're like, you know what? I trust her. So when she says it's better, I believe her. So it just goes such a long way, right? Like the little things that you think are not going to make a huge impact, like doing a class that you said you're going to do, or doing a call that you said you were going to do, or send something out, right? Or whatever, those little things, right? Build trust so that when the bigger things come into play, right? They know I can trust her because she always says what she's going to do. Whatever she says, or whatever he says, right? I know that that's the truth. And I experienced that a lot with Gary as well. Like just being around him was just such a huge honor. Like when he said he was going to do it, he was going to do it, and he was going to do it like 10 times better and faster. And I was like, oh my gosh, this man is amazing. I don't even know. His vision is so far out there. Like I couldn't even grasp all of it sometimes, but because he was so passionate and because he did what he said he was going to do, even if it was super wild, I was like, okay, that's it. I trust this man. So I'm sure you guys have someone in your life who's like this as well. Yeah. Do what you do. Like what Josie said, do what you say you're going to do. Exactly.
This is good. Probably the least fun one though, right? Like to talk about in the book. I'm like, this wasn't that fun for him to learn. The next one I think is fun because this is the thing. If we don't have this fourth ingredient, which is enhance communication, add transparency and authenticity. So to me, the authenticity piece really plays a lot in trust and vision. Like it just is like what kind of knits a lot of it together. But the book teaches us a lot to fill voids of communication with positivity, because people will fill voids with negativity. And I catch myself doing this all the freaking time. And I hate it, but it's how I look at, like, I look at life. Like I like to know what could be better. So kind of like what Beverly was saying with coaching Kit, like I just think all the time, the way my mind works is if I am doing something, it is 100% fine with me. If you're like, hey, this part sucked. And I'm like, awesome. It will be way better next time. Because it's how, like, my mind is fine with that. I love public recognition, but honestly, like if someone's telling me how something was, I am much better. I don't need you to tell me that it was like, this was great. Your recipe was so fun. Thanks for showing. Like I'm fine. But I know most people do not prefer to have no communication and then have something they perceive as negative. So that's something for me that, like, perception is everything. We know it's reality for people. So people will fill the void. If no one's chatting in your chat thread, you better realize it's going to be negative when someone does, because no one knows how to bring up anything unless it's something that can be negative, like can be like today in my chat thread, it was not that it was bad, but I just noticed that there wasn't a lot of communication from last night to this morning. Then today, someone with a shipping issue, not that that was wrong, but if there would have been other chatter that was positive, that wouldn't have been what they thought to type in this leader chat thread. They would have probably asked me direct. Like it just, I don't know if that's helpful to anyone, but it really is just true how we are as human beings. When someone asks you, how's your day? And then they talk about something bad, and you're like, yeah, today just kind of, it's just a little off. I kind of headache. The weather's weird. And you're like, why? Why am I talking about this? So really talking about filling communication spaces, enhancing them by always replacing assumptions with truth and speaking out things that are positive, so that that is what knits together people and that they're talking about things that are positive. So company-wide conference calls, having weekly meeting, having status updates, making sure you're sharing out what's happening from corporate, making sure, and I'm sorry, Virginia, Pollen, can't breathe. Welcome to my life. I'm like every call, I'm like, I can't breathe. Sorry, guys. Sorry about that. Just being authentic and transparent. So there you go. See, it's okay if your flavor of your soup or of your culture is different than someone else's, as long as it's what yours is and you're showing up for people in a way that they know that and they can see it. Because here's the thing, we all have heard that expression, you could smell a rat. Well, I can't smell a rat. There could be rats in my house and I wouldn't smell them. That's not really true. But with our businesses, for sure, people can smell a rat. What I mean by that is if you just like decide today that you're going to show up because you read this book and you're excited and you do some random one time, like, guys, I'm so happy. I love you guys so much. This is so much fun to work together. Today, I'm going to talk to you about culture. And then you don't do any other parts of it. Then, like, it doesn't really affect change because it's not who you are bringing to the table every day. It's just a one time thing that inspired you. So that's really maybe not where your head goes when you read these, but to me, it's like all these pieces are these long-term things, like having better communication, making sure I'm authentic and transparent, making sure that I'm seen and I'm showing up and that other people do it too. Stars and senior stars and executives that are part of my group that maybe don't have their own, they have to show up for themselves every day for their teams because wherever their teams are seen, me or seeing recorded calls or like they want to see them. And that is part of this whole piece of being transparent, that we're being transparent about where we are. Maybe you didn't rank up this year. That's okay. Maybe your paycheck really made it so that you had to get another job on top of this being your second. Like maybe you have 3 streams of income right now that you're like, dude, I was hoping this would be full time. Tell your team that. Like, show up, be authentic, like, show them the way, and only you will be able to do that. I have one more thing on here. One more thing. Sorry. Oh, frequency matters. That was what I had as a note from there. Frequency of communication matters. And it's okay if your frequency is like real low compared to someone's frequency that you're like, dude, that girl texts me every 2 days and and here's the thing, you'll look at it as negative because you're comparing yourself. When really you should cheer on and be excited for whatever their system, their way of showing up is and figure out yours. If it is a once a week Zoom and you're like, that is what I'm doing, that's where I'm going, then here's the thing, don't waver from it. Like, that's what you're doing, that's where you're going, stick to it. If you said you were going to do this book club and you haven't done a book yet, who cares? Read the next one. Like, it's okay. Just do do that piece of it and do it well. And that leads us really into, and then of course we'll open it up and talk, but I wanted to connect these together, that the last big point of the book about engagement was measuring engagement and making sure we do that. Because if you say you want to have a soup can in every home in the world, you better make sure you know how many have it now. And it's funny, I perceive myself, and Tracy can talk to this much more. I perceive myself as not knowing a lot about numbers and statistics and where people are in business, but I actually like it. So I falsely tell myself the lie that I'm not good at tracking things because, wait for it, because I don't really know how to teach someone to do something that I do inherently. I don't know if you guys, anybody felt that way about something? Like, I inherently kind of like look at things differently than, it's not systematic where I'm like, run this report, run. It's very much like did you look at Annalie's numbers this week and you look at who's new in her team? Like, it's very organic for me where I'm like, of course I know my ER percentage because it's naturally in my head, nobody who's ordering. So it's like this thing that I think is interesting about measuring. I've tried so hard to tell people, here's the 5 reports to run every day, but it's not what I do. So I will say, here's something you could do. It's not how I am able to work, but I realize we're all different styles of learning. So if you're someone who is really super visual or kinesthetic, you probably need to physically do stuff and physically look at it side by side. And then you probably need to write it down. If you are someone who is super auditory, here's the thing. I can talk. It is better for me to actually say out loud what's going on in my business, and I have numbers as part of it, and even hear myself say it. Maybe it sounds weird, but it's like even better for me just to hear myself say it. Because then in my head, the next day, I know exactly what I need to do, like exactly who needs help, exactly who needs focus, and where I'm going. But if you're someone who also, with that piece, if you're someone who you're like, oh, I have no idea, but numbers scare me, then you probably need to do a call with someone on your team, cross line, up line, whatever, where you're like, I pulled up inactives. Yep, there's 500 of like, and then you go, okay, great. how do I filter out? Like, you probably literally need to talk through each part of it so that you are able to truly see this visual picture of what numbers result in for you. And when people say like year over year comparison of your business, if you don't know what that means, say that and figure it out. That's what I meant with engagement, that I just hit home for me. I think we all hear people talking about this stuff, but like if you don't know how to measure and you're not sure what that means, you're not going to ever value this piece enough. You're not going to value it enough that you're not going to be able to tell if it's working or not, or what's working. Some other great tools like the abundance tracker. I know for me, it's a huge tool. And my best example of that is, I mean, it's been probably 5 years, but I really want to have a call with April. And she is so kind and sweet and gentle, even if she doesn't, well, she's pretty gentle. I mean, she'll give you some good wisdom, but I mean, she's gentle in her delivery. And so I was like, I need that today. Like, I was like, I want to hear from someone who is not close to me, as in is not knowing all these people on my team. And she said, send me your abundance tracker and your goals for this next 6 months, and we can have a call. And I was like, oh, that's great. Sounds hard. And it was a great exercise because it showed me that a different way that people learn is they actually need to see month over month because they don't remember. Like, I can tell you guys every month that I've enrolled one person, like only one person. Like, I know them for the past 7 years because I feel like I carry that because it's like this part of a statistic that I don't love. When most people I have seen will say, hey, I'm enrolling about 8 a month, and I'm like, really? This month says 0 and this month says 3, and they literally don't remember. So don't type which one you are, but that's something I really wanted to just say about measuring engagement. You have to figure out for you what your brain needs and then feed your brain that information. Feed it to your brain. So engaged companies have 1.6 times the earnings of people with lower engagement measures. And in average companies, the engaged employees versus the disengaged employees is always almost close to 2%. Like, I'm sorry, double what's in engaged companies. And what I mean by engaged companies is people who have all this stuff and they measure it and they talk about it and they work together year after year. So Gallup uses quarter 12. That's not quarter 12, uses month 12 to demonstrate engaged employees, increased productivity and profits. And what that means basically for us is at the end of the year, are your people as engaged in comparison to the profits or what you've grown by as they were in month 1? And so think about that a little bit. That's really not for us a calendar year. That's like month 1 with someone in the business. Are they as engaged on month 12? And are they still producing and profiting more than they were month 1? Like, it's a whole thing that goes together and looking at it. So then having those last 2 pieces about relationships, building relationships and having engaged relationships. I'm going to mute myself and see if anybody wants to chime in on how that works in your business and plays out. Yep, it's hard. Building relationships is hard. I love that. That's like a summary of that part of the book over and over. Building relationships is hard. Building relationships takes time. Building relationships requires you to ask questions of people. And that folds right into the engagement piece. You need to ask people about their personal vision. You need to know them. Our leader, Lindsay Gramont, used to always say, know the color, like knowing your leaders, knowing the color of the carpet of your leaders is huge. And I'm like, man, you can do that through Zoom, guys, or FaceTime. You don't have to just go visit them. You can know something about their house, their personal life. And that's huge because that means you can ask them about it and follow up with it. And always doing that authentically. Because I will tell you, sometimes I haven't talked to somebody in 6 months. And I think it's like really weird for me to say, oh, if I've never talked to them about their 10-year-old before, and I'm like, oh, how's Michael doing at school? Then they're like, did you care? Or you were trying to chat before you asked me to do something or before you asked me how something was. So I really try hard to be authentic to how I communicate, but also engage people. So find out how that works for you because we're all different. If you walk through a personal journey with someone, don't send them a text that's like, have you contacted your Miss DRs without asking them again, how's this going? So just kind of my point there. And then, oh yeah, create an internal university, promoting your leadership practices, launching, having mentoring programs, having lunch outside, lunch with people. I mean, these are his statistics. I mean, not statistics, his suggestions from the book. But remember, we have to apply them to our businesses. So whatever that looks like, if you like to do coffee chats or happy hours or make and say events, like they have to be engaging. So for me, the big struggle, and maybe you guys too, is I don't always know what's engaging people and not. Because people show up real randomly. You know what I mean? Like the same people don't come to the same things. And then sometimes only the same people come. And then sometimes people only watch the replay. And then so I will just say all of us are figuring that out as we go. And I don't think there's something that any of us can suggest that we're like, this is it. Like, this is how you engage people. Because even like giving away stuff, I would say that only engages like 30% of my people. They don't really, it's not always that. Gathering in person, that engages probably 30% of people. You know, it's all just different. So anyone else before we hop off?
Yeah, that was so good, Ashley. And I was just going to say, I think that's such an important reminder that, different people will be attracted or engaged in different ways, right? For someone, it'll be a call. For someone, it'll be a text. For someone, it'll be a Zoom. For someone, it'll be in person. And so it really does kind of speak to, as a leader, offering different things, like different modes, right? Different ways to engage with people is going to be really key, right? So if we're just focused on a Facebook group, which, let's just be real honest, Facebook groups stink right now. The engagement is terrible, not for lack of trying, but it's just the algorithm is just very, very challenging. But if that's the only mode that we're communicating with people, right, then they're going to feel super disengaged because there's no other way to connect with them. If they don't see your posts, they're going to think, well, she's not communicating anything. So I think this is such a great reminder that it's not one thing, it's lots of little things. It's lots of little things. And I think I am a system person, which is so fun because Ashley and I are a little bit different, right? Like I am very much a system person. So I actually do run reports to see like, okay, what's going on? I sort of do that regularly. And I'll even have like on my list, okay, contact this person, contact that person. Sometimes it's organic, like what you do, Ashley, because I'm just like, okay, today I'm just going to go in and see who I can reach out to. But then other times it's very systematic where I kind of do that. And this is why some things, like I feel like maybe reaching out when it's someone's birthday or an oily anniversary, or following up to see how they're doing because they asked you a question about a very specific need. I think all of those things are really great. And how you, I have a notepad. It's nothing, it's not like a huge, right? Like mind blowing, what system does she use? I have a notepad and I'm like, this week, who I need to follow up with. And I just like write down a list of people there. But whatever that kind of looks like, I think is really key. But I love that, Ashley. I think you have honed in so many really good points. And I have really loved diving back into this book because it's been such a great reminder about how culture drives so much, right, with the team, and that we need to be working on this constantly. Like, what's our culture? What are the behaviors and thoughts and feelings that we really want our teams to feel? And I know that 2020 has been really hard, but I think it's just been a great way to re-engage in all of this. So thank you for bringing this book to us, Ashley. It's been awesome.
Thank you so much, Tracy. I am excited. Actually, I'm not excited at all about the next book. It was like so super painful for me when I read it. Sorry, I'm just being honest. Atomic Habits is not like, it's probably, I'm like, this is necessary. But maybe some of y'all do. I don't love books that make me stop doing things. Like, I don't love that. So I'm excited to read it and actually implement. I read it, I guess last year. I didn't really do it. Last year, as in 2020, I was like, oh, this is a cute book. So it kind of reminds me of the Compound Effect, only I was not in a space to like implement the suggestions. So I'm rereading it and I'm actually going to do it. Anybody else with me? I'm going to do it. I'm going to create better habits, but I'm going to get rid of some bad ones. And I'm going to have fun doing it with all of you. Before we jump off, April, do you want to add anything else about soup?
So sorry, I missed part of that. The guy was
Okay.
supposed to show up in like 15 minutes and he came 45 minutes early. Well, I don't know what, team culture, it's everything. It's you get to decide what it is. They will follow the leader. So if you are always complaining about Young Living's mess ups, so will they. If you are talking about them, but then, offering solutions towards them, so will they. Like they'll just mimic the leader. They'll mirror your efforts. So even when you don't feel like doing all the positive things, or there's just some things in every job that we don't love every aspect of, and just still do it with a smile and your full heart and doing your best at it. That will overflow into the culture of your team. I did have a few notes about culture, if we can go over for just like a few seconds, if y'all don't mind, in some ways to implement. Did you guys talk about ways of implementing things for team culture?
We would love to hear you.
Let's see, where am I? Okay, I will have I just had 10 points that will make a difference to your team. One was, oh gosh, it just disappeared. Hold on. Sorry, you guys. I may be looking in the wrong place for it. Well, I guess I'll just say what I think about a few things. I think being on purpose and being confident that will overflow into your team. Speaking anytime that you can in front of your team, what you're speaking about comes with some thought beforehand. Like, I know a lot of people like to just go off the cuff, but even if you can write some little outlines of things to make sure you cover everything, that will transfer over to your team as well. Because just being on the fly, things sometimes get left off, or you end up using a lot of filler stuff that doesn't matter. And so if you can stay on point, your team will see you stay on point, and then they'll go on and do the same thing. And when I say that, I don't mean don't be yourself and do all the things you do, but when we get really sidetracked constantly, and a 2-minute video becomes a 10-minute video, people will stop watching your videos, because we live in this whole ADD society and they just want to see things very quickly. And so if I don't write 3 key points that I want to make, or an outline of something, I just tend to make a 30-minute video instead of a 5-minute video. And I know people don't watch the whole thing, so that transfers over, is all I'm saying. If you want people to be to the point, or if you want them to be long-winded, you end up with a really long-winded team. Does that make sense? I know that sounds kind of weird, but gosh, I wish I could remember the rest of my notes that I made. I just don't know what happened to them. They're it's like it didn't save or something. Hold on. I don't know what happened to them.
It's okay.
Oh, you guys.
No, we appreciate you. This has been so good. And encourage your friends to come. I think what happens.
Found it.
Yes. I was like, I love that. I was like, I think what happens. But I was like, let's give April a couple of minutes.
Okay. So culture, we all talked about at the beginning what we thought culture was. And basically, if you can think of it like this, what do you want your team to be known for? That is the culture you get to create. What culture are you creating with them? Because a year from today, what do you want your whole group to be known for? How are you going to stand out? And I did this exercise years ago with at a network marketing event with Eric Worre. He had people make a list of 10 things that you want your team to be known for. And then you cross off 3 and narrow it down to 7. And then you cross off 3 and you narrow it down to 4. And then you make those 4 things your game plan for the year, that you want to create that kind of culture, or what you want your team to be known for the next year. And one of the things was events. There are non-negotiables. We should always be attending events, especially convention. It's not even a matter of do your best to get there. No, it's get there. Whether you're buying an online ticket or you're going in person. Now it's not in person this year, but it is a must. Like promote convention. Number two thing, that could be one of your 10 down to 3 down to, down to 4, I mean, was personal development. Do you want your team to be known for personal development, always growing and reading and learning? Is that something that's important to you and your team? 3, and Ashley and Tracy are so good at this, is edifying people and being a professional encourager and teacher. And the result of what you're constantly doing is encouraging people and making the point to your team, like what we can do together in the world is what it's about. It's not about me, you know? Another point could be is cross-line support. It's not my team against your team. We're all one team. And so there are teams in Young Living that are known for being excellent cross-line support and working very well with other teams. And there are some teams that are known for the exact opposite. Don't come near my team. Don't talk to my people, or no, you can't, we're not going to collaborate, whatever. You can be one or the other. Professionalism is another thing you could be known for or put out as team culture. There's humanitarian services and giving back. Like some people give out of guilt and their lack of self-worth for earning money. And it's okay for you to earn money because you earned it. I just have to say that. And like you did some things that you or others were not willing to do. And it's okay to keep some of your money. It's okay to give some of your money. You don't have to buy every person dinner or save every person on the planet. You do what God has called you to do. And so when it comes to humanitarian efforts, there are some teams that are really known for that. And you just have to know that in that, if that becomes part of your team culture, you have to know that you have a responsibility to help the world. We all do, but you don't have the responsibility to save, fix, and rescue every person on the planet with the wealth that you create. And the truth is that your influence is actually more important than your dollars. And you can leverage philanthropy like that. And then of course there's always the motives behind giving. Like you can't be giving out of guilt and self-worth issues. So be very examinatory of that. Is that a word? You can examine that. And if that's what you want your team to be known for, is humanitarian services, just know that you can't be doing it out of guilt or lack of self-worth. It really needs to be something that a team is very passionate about, called to. It's easy to say no to things when you know it's not your calling. It's not easy to say no to things when you're working with guilt. Integrity and honesty is another thing that's huge in team culture. Being a person of your word, walking your talk. Do you want your team to be known for integrity and honesty? Balance is a good one. Need to make sure your health is good. Balance with your family is good. Slow and steady doesn't always win the race. You can be the rabbit for a while and then be the turtle for a while and then be the rabbit again for a while. It's like the synchronizer on like sound systems, how you'll have bass and treble and left and right and all these other things. And in a really professional one, there's like 20 of them. You can constantly be adjusting and being the rabbit for a while and the turtle for a while, and then swapping and being the rabbit there and being the turtle here. Your plates don't have to spin exactly at the same level across the board. They can be up and down across the board. I think that's what balance is knowing that you can do that. You can run and you can walk and you can launch something and then you can maintain it. But you can't remain in launch mode, in 90-day run mode all the time. You will burn out. So do the one 90-day hardcore burst per year, and then do the maintenance in between kind of thing. Another team culture characteristic, I think, is building each other up, which kind of goes with edification. how you look, how you dress professionally, like dress on purpose. I don't show up in flip-flops and jeans to events. I just don't. And maybe I'll dress up some jeans a little bit if it's something at my house, but I'm not in like workout gear. And I mean, if it's a yoga event, yes, but like I'm just saying dress on purpose. And there's fitness organizations that wear fitness clothes and there's spandex everywhere. But how are you going to represent Young Living in the way that you put yourself together for your events or your Zooms or whatever? Because if you don't care, you're going to get a certain result. And if you do care, you're going to get a better result. And I just think it's a point to make of emphasis. And that was something I learned at an event a long time ago, is to dress on purpose, because people will know, and make sure your image is something that you want it to be. 11, this is the 11th point, but something else to do is humility. Need a little more, stick out our chest and less apologizing for our existing in our profession. But, there's also the timidity that can come along with network marketers, because people bash network marketing. So I guess it's just having a little more confidence and pride in our industry, but humility at the same time, being proud to be involved in network marketing. Not like the I'm better than you attitude, but the I really believe in this and I would love your support attitude. Our products teams, there are teams that are just known for products or for DIY events, or I guess, there's teams that have built solely on Ningxia alone. That is it. They don't talk about oils. They don't talk about supplements. They only build on Ningxia, or they only build on the Thieves line. Back in the day, there were teams that only built on Raindrop, and that was it. So is that something you want your team to be known for? Rank advancement is another one. Being known for stability, setting expectations that you're moving and you're growing. Healthy speeds, of course. Fun. Ashley's team is definitely known for fun. Lots of good times, big smiles, meeting after meeting, people hanging out, having a good time. There's personal growth. There's leadership development. The leadership development one is a big, because you can have lots of really great big people who are really leading, and then lots of worker bees kind of thing. Or you can create leaders and pass that down, and you constantly duplicate leaders. So there's some people that just want to be large and in charge, and they want the worker bees. And that's not really our business model. Our business model is I own my own business, and so do you. So here's a strategy that worked for me. You can use it or not use it. It's up to you. Or there's an event coming, or there's something that is shareable, but I'm just not going to share it with my people because I don't think they need to know that. Well, no, that's not our business model. Share it and let them decide if they want to be a part of that, whether it's an event or a book to read or whatever, goal-driven, duplication team, controlling distractions team, being on time. Like there's so many things you can create in culture, and you have to be really committed to that initiative, like more than anyone else, if you're leading the whole team. And if you're part of your uplines team and you're doing that with your upline, you get to choose what you want your downline to look like too. But if you want your downline to be a part of your upline's whole group dynamic, get with your upline and say, this is a character trait or a characteristic I would love to see promoted in our team, whether that's just operating with integrity and honesty, or what was another one I said, just having fun or having a good time together. So yeah, those are my things about team culture and things you can do for team culture. There's a level of inside and outside, and a level of belonging for people who want to follow a culture. And there's a quiet level of not belonging, and we want to make sure everyone feels like they can belong. So they won't last if they don't feel like they're part of it, or that they can fold into that. Like, think about the White House. There's a culture at the White House. If you don't like it, or if you fight it just a little bit, you try to work at the White House, you won't last a week. You have to like mold into it. And some people don't want to do that. And so when you can agree on like cultural pillars with your leaders, then they'll stick to that, and every company has it. So why wouldn't yours? Okay, I'm done. Thank you.
This has been so good. You are awesome. All of you are awesome. April specifically is more awesome than y'all, but don't, I'm just, she's going to say no. I'm totally kidding. But I just meant that was such a helpful list, because I think the practical part about it is that we get to take these things that are concrete and make them, I mean, they're concrete things. What I'm saying, we have to mold them into what it looks like for us. And that's fun and hard. And we will see fruits of it right away as well as long term. That's what I always think about all these pieces of culture. You can affect change immediately. Also, 5 years from now, you can say, I'm so glad I did that then. Like, I'm so glad we started that. So thanks for being on here with us. I will go ahead as soon as we know the date for May, which we can do in the next 24 hours. Just have to look at the way that the Thursdays fall. We will put it in the WhatsApp chat. All of us can copy paste it and put it in our groups and in our leader chats, wherever those might be. It'll be great. And we will see you then. Please send the recording of this video to all of your leaders, even if they haven't read the book. That's what I want to encourage you to do. Make sure people are watching, even if they're not feeling like they should because they didn't read the book. It's okay. They can read it later. They can read it as they go, or they can just listen to this and learn from it. So thanks you guys for being on here, and we will see you all soon.